Good morning and welcome once again to the second webinar in our series on education imperatives for the new normal, planning for flexible learning. This webinar series is part of the Assistance to Programs and Initiatives to Reform Education, or ASPIRE. Supported by the Private Education Assistance Committee and the Philippine Association of Private Schools, Colleges and Universities, or PAPSCU. At this point, allow me to remind us of some rules as we participate in this webinar. Please turn off your camera and microphone if you are not the speaker. This would avoid unnecessary noise and distractions to these presenters. Do not navigate to other websites or search engines. Doing so might weaken your connectivity. Use the chat box for your questions to the speaker. You may do this at any time during the presentation, and they will address them after they make the presentation. Please wait for the speakers to address your questions during the open forum. And at this point, let me share the order of our presentations this morning. We have two featured, taking off from yesterday's session, Dr. Esther Ojena, our project team leader, will briefly share on what transpired yesterday. And we have two featured speakers, Dr. Felicia Yeban of Philippine Normal University, who will walk us through flexible learning options. Mr. Carlo Fernando will present about the technology requirements. After which, we would invite Dr. Marilyn Balagtas of PNU to give a summary of the discussions. At this point, may I invite our project team leader, Dr. Esther Ojena, the former president of the Philippine Normal University, for the opening statement and learnings from day one. Dr. Ojena, please.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'd like to give special greetings to PEAC Executive Director Doris Ferrer, to the PAP School President Dr. Lulu Sese, the participants from private schools, colleges, and universities, and my colleagues in the PAP School Aspire team. Good morning to everyone. It's a pleasant day. We're having day two this morning for the webinar under this project, Pop School Aspire. And I'm happy that we're moving to day two. What we've learned from day one are the following. We've given you the toolkit. It's available in the websites of PEAC and Pop School. And we have given recommendations on how to do online surveys. We take note that some of you have data, and we have indicated that your data can fit in to the online surveys as recommended. And we hope that from here onwards, you have been convinced that you would do your online surveys, because they could definitely help you in transitioning your programs from face-to-face to online system. As we move on to day two, we're focusing on the discussions on flexible learning options and education technology affordances. And we hope that the data would have some help in terms of the implications of all these efforts on curriculum for flexible learning programs, which you can implement, and on education technology requirements. I'd like to welcome you to day two. And as we move to day two, I'd like to quote Klaus Schwab, who said, "The pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world. That opportunity begins now." Welcome to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ohena. And now at this point, I would be inviting Dr. Felicia Yeban, our first speaker, to make her presentation. Dr. Yeban teaches human rights and social science education at the Philippine Normal University, where she has served in various posts, such as Vice President for Finance and Administration, Vice President for University Relations, Dean of the College of Graduate Studies and Teacher Education Research, and Associate Dean of the Faculty of Behavioral and Social Sciences. She moderates the Buhay Guro, streamed on Teacher Summit Facebook group. It is an online meeting of teachers and education leaders to discuss educational issues from the teacher's perspective. She obtained her PhD in Development Studies from the De La Salle University. At this point, Dr. Yeban, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the webinar series sponsored by PAPSCO Aspire. My topic for today is about migrating face-to-face system to flexible learning delivery. Let me take off from where Dr. Ojena and Dr. Bedura left off yesterday. What we have now is what we call the Great Reset in education. We have to start asking ourselves as school leaders and as educators and teachers this question: which aspects of pre-COVID basic education will remain and which aspects will change forever? If we try to answer this question, it will guide us in the way we position our school in the new normal. What I have here is a metaphor for what is required. One, you can look at what's going on from a survival perspective, nearsighted. We're just changing the system so that by come August, we're ready. Or we can look at the situation where we are in from a far-sighted perspective, which means that we are also trying to migrate our system to the new normal for the long haul. In other words, this is not just a short-term issue, but a long-term event as well. So yesterday, Dr. Ojena made mention of this framework. No, she discussed this framework, and I would like to take off from here. In this framework, it shows that learning competencies, the learning competencies as of now have been reduced by the Department of Education. So the department, or DepEd, has already issued the most essential learning competencies. They were able to reduce the competencies from 60,000 or so to a little bit over than 5,000. So that's good. Okay, so that as far as that one is concerned, we're pretty much covered. But from the learning competencies which serve as the input, but we also have to bear in mind that what's more important is whether we will achieve that or attain the curriculum in terms of the learning outcomes. So that's going to be the assessment portion of the framework. And Dr. Marlene Balagtas will discuss this tomorrow. So I will be focusing on the program design. Okay, and the program design, in order for us to determine the flexible learning options for our school, we have offered to you what we call as the YOBS model. What is essential for every school is to conduct a scanning of the environment. And surely you have conducted surveys after surveys, because many institutions, even the Department of Education, it has asked us to conduct surveys. And of course, even PAYAC has already conducted or administered some survey questionnaires for school leaders to administer in their own school, no? But in our YOBS model, we approach it in a different manner because we do not look at the survey as an inferential research, meaning to say we're not here, as discussed yesterday, that the survey is not to generalize the characteristic of the sample. So the sample or the sampling and even the sample is not important here. What is important is a universal survey, because what we have in mind is to track what the individual faculty or teacher, what the individual student's context is. So that's the YOBS model, which was discussed yesterday by Dr. Bedoral. And I observed that many schools have already conducted the surveys, but they do not optimize the data as basis for designing their program. In this model, it automatically provides you an analysis as to which flexible learning option is appropriate for each student and for each faculty. So that means it's up to the school leader and the different actors within the school to make certain decisions as to the flexible learning options that will be made available. In designing the FLOs, we are encumbered by a phenomenon called digital divide. And we can understand this by thinking of 3 dimensions. Number 1 is access. There are people who do not have access because they are located in areas where connectivity is almost zero or even weak. So that's an issue of access. Affordability is perhaps you have access, but you cannot afford it. So some afford it, but they don't have access to it. Okay, so that by itself is part of digital divide. And some people, they have access and they can afford it, but they have limited digital literacy. That is also a factor to consider in digital divide. And the YOBS model incorporated all these factors to determine if indeed we are ready for certain flexible learning options. So here, by this time, the Department of Education has already more or less identified the options available to our students. And I think many schools have already identified such, no? So medyo clear na yung ano-anong option. So definitely face-to-face is a no-go for at least until the vaccine is available. That is what the government has declared. One of the advantages, of course, of face-to-face delivery mode is it's everyone's comfort zone. It is our default system. However, it's so risky at this time. And if you wish to have limited F2F, then it will have added cost for social distancing requirements, plus the high risk that is involved in conducting face-to-face sessions. So we are left with other alternative delivery modes. So for the new normal, the alternative becomes the default mode, and the face-to-face, which used to be the default mode for the old normal, is now the alternative for the new normal. So that's interesting. No? So what are the options for us? Number 1, we have, of course, from face-to-face, we now embrace remote learning or distance learning. And it could be remote learning online, which means we make use of synchronous activities. There is preponderance of online resources. No? These resources are available for use by our teachers and our students. It is technology aided. So that's why it's very important that students and teachers and the school itself, we have technology and connectivity. But the disadvantages are this. we have digital divide. So most of our students don't have access to gadgets. And even if they have access to gadgets, they don't have access, they cannot afford it, or the connectivity is weak. So that's really a problem. And some of our teachers may not have the digital tools or the digital literacy to navigate the intricacies of remote online learning. Plus, the main problem, I suppose, is that our learners are not self-directed, which is something which is very critical for remote online learning to succeed. So if you don't have access to connectivity or good connectivity, you can have remote online asynchronous, because asynchronous activities, they don't utilize much bandwidth. No, your internet capacity is low, and so there are other ways to get around the weak connectivity. Advantage of which is it is self-paced. So unlike the synchronous, you have to be present, like this. You have to be present to be able to watch this. But in a way, it is asynchronous because it's being recorded in your own time. You can go back and then still watch this. So it is self-paced. So it is technology aided. Remote online asynchronous is technology aided, but limited due to connectivity. And digital divide is, of course, real as well to a certain degree. Digital divide is real in remote online asynchronous. And similar to remote online synchronous, Filipino learners are not self-directed. They are very dependent on the teacher. So if you don't have access to gadget, and if you don't have access to connectivity, there is another option for students and for schools: remote print, or the print modular. And I think the Department of Education, or most of our public schools, will have this as their default FLO. So it is self-paced and can reach the unreached. Okay, even if they don't have access to the internet, zero connection, so the modules can reach them. But it is not interactive. That is one disadvantage of remote print. Even if we try as hard as we could to write the modules in a very interactive manner, it is still not as interactive as online synchronous and online asynchronous. It is also dependent on a distribution system and a retrieval system. And maybe distribution system may not be so much of a problem, but a retrieval system could be. So if you want to blend face-to-face and other distance learning modalities, you call it as blended learning. So you have all the advantages and disadvantages. But I suppose for now, we will just focus on remote online synchronous, remote online asynchronous, and remote print or modular in my discussion for this morning session. Now, sometimes teachers and school leaders, we are not, I would say, we're not very techy, and we do not understand the back end of technology use. But for online learning to succeed, we have to understand that it operates on internet capacity of schools. And so as a teacher or even a student, so we have to be mindful of the bandwidth that is required in the way we design our modules, our online modules, our materials. So in this is not original. This is created by Daniel Stanford. But I think it's important for us to understand bandwidth, the concept of bandwidth and immediacy. Of course, in online learning, immediacy is the most ideal. However, because this one is high immediacy. Video conferences, audio conferences, these are high immediacy modes to deliver online education. Why high immediacy? Because it's immediate. It's immediate. So I can talk to you and you can easily throw in some questions through Facebook or through Zoom, okay? But it requires high bandwidth. So if your connectivity is only 5 Mbps, you might have difficulty. So as a teacher, because I have to consider the context of my students, that's why in the YOBS model, we also ask the students as regards their connectivity, how efficient is their connectivity, because if you're the teacher and you recognize that your students don't have access to very efficient connectivity and they don't have high bandwidth, huwag kang mag-video conference, di ba? Hindi dapat ganon ang estilo mo, di ba? Hindi mo dapat gamitin yon. However, you can record it, di ba? You can record it, pati yung audio, yung video, may mga pwede din ng discussions notes, like halimbawa sa Facebook, we can go back. It is low immediacy, it's still high bandwidth, but not as much as video conferencing. Okay? So for instance, if wag naman sana, by any chance, nawalan kayo ng ilaw, pwede kayong pumunta pa rin at mapanood ito because this is recorded. That's the beauty naman of pre-recorded video or recording this discussion. Now we have low bandwidth. So if it is low bandwidth, meaning to say your students, siguro mga 3 Mbps lang o ikaw 3 Mbps. So pwede yung collaborative documents like Google, yung mga Google Docs, no? Pwedeng doon yung mga bata, group chat and messaging. So it's low bandwidth. Kaya in most of the surveys, students would emphasize that they prefer Facebook and they prefer Messenger kasi libre, no? They don't use much of their data. And even if they are located in areas where connectivity is poor, they can still use FB and they can still use messaging. So, and it is there is high immediacy and low bandwidth. So, if your context is such that you don't have access to high bandwidth, magandang gamitin ang group chat and messaging and Facebook. However, kung yung kaya mo lang is email, reading with text images or discussion boards, low bandwidth, low immediacy kasi nawalan sila ng, let's say, nawalan sila ng ng charge yung cellphone nila. So, pero nandoon naman yon. So, pwede pa rin silang gamitin. Pwede nilang puntahan yung email nila kapag pwede na. So, I think this matrix can guide us, teachers, in designing whether you would go synchronous and you would go asynchronous. Okay, so there are lessons that we've learned from others in their practice kasi some schools and some countries have gone ahead of us in implementing remote learning. So what can we learn or what have we learned from their experience? So number one, teachers tend to overcompensate. What do I mean by that? Because as teachers, we think and we feel that face-to-face is still the best delivery mode. Diba? So remote learning is seen as having lower quality than face-to-face. So the tendency of teachers is to give students so much work to do that is overcompensating. Diba? We are not in the lives of our students now, they are in their homes, so we overcompensate. Ang dami natin pinapagawa. So yan yung practice, naging experience, the experience of other countries. Number two, face-to-face curriculum cannot be automatically migrated to remote learning. And I think the Department of Education has has already learned this. That's why that's why they reduce the number of competencies. And we will discuss in my presentation how we can migrate the curriculum to online learning. Number 3, on-screen time should be limited. Hindi po pwedeng nakababad ang bata. According to the American Pediatric Association, there is a limit to on-screen time for every age bracket, which I will show later. So it cannot be, when we speak of online education, it doesn't mean nakababad ang bata sa internet, nakababad ang bata sa Zoom or sa anumang video conferencing. That is a myth and that is a misconception. Number 4, parents are overburdened because in this kind of delivery mode, parents become the para teachers. They become the tutors of their kids. Dati, in face-to-face, they just dump their kids to us, di ba? But this time, they cannot do that. So parents are overburdened. What if you have 3 or 4 kids? So you could just imagine how many modules the parent, the mommies, and the mommy and the daddy would facilitate for their kids. No? Number 5, learners are overwhelmed because teachers overcompensate. Okay? Team approach to instructional delivery is necessary. In the face-to-face, we have a very compartmentalized view of the curriculum. So if it is mathematics, if it is science, social studies, math teachers, they do their thing. Social studies teachers, they do their thing. They don't talk much. They don't collaborate much. So, but in this type of delivery mode, that has to change because integration, they have to work across subject areas. Okay? And feedback is key. So dito, sana almost every day dapat ma-monitor ng mga teacher ang bata. Okay. So what to do? How do we do it? No? How do we migrate? How do we prepare for remote learning? Whether it is remote online, remote online synchronous, remote online asynchronous, or remote print. So there are five steps that we need to go through. Okay, because this is a toolkit, so medyo procedural ang ating gagawin. Are you ready? Okay. Step number 1. You have to create a matrix of horizontal integration of subject area competencies chunked weekly. Okay? So you have choices. Either you use the curriculum that you use for school year 2019-2020, or you use the MELCs of the Department of Education, yung most essential learning competencies. And you have to chunk it weekly. Well, ang MELCs naman naka-chunk weekly, no? So for per grading period. So you have to create this Excel. Please use Excel, not Word, chart, no, table, wag doon. Sa Excel po tayo. So use this. If you want, unfortunately, the Department of Education has not issued a horizontal mapping of the MELCs. Unlike for the ELCs, meron sila. But for the MELCs, they don't have. So a very young faculty member of Philippine Normal University by the name of Jerry Areta, along with his students, patiently mapped the MELCs. Ito po yan. At matatagpuan nyo yan, you can access it if you join the Teacher Summit FB group. So join, and then we'll accept you, and then go to files. Nandun po, kompleto, from K to 10. Yung senior high school, hindi pa po nila nagagawa because it's too much work. So, ganito po siya ang magiging itsura niya. Okay? So, you can, because this is not official, because the Department of Education has not issued the official horizontal mapping, but you can use this and improve on the work of Professor Areta of Philippine Normal University. So, step 2, once that's done, okay, you have to review your banig, no? Your horizontal map, and select the need to know and nice to know competencies during the pandemic. Okay? So you have here the competencies. Okay? Nakamap na po siya. And then you have to decide, is this particular competency a need to know or a nice to know? Ba? And you might be surprised, everything is nice to know, walang need to know. Okay? Or, baka nasinsin, need to know pala. Karamihan. So, and then you can add some more competencies because you are in the private sector, so you can add, it's just minimum, so you can add more which you think are important competencies for students to know. Okay? So, to guide you in adding more competencies, you might want to consider this 21st century skills for the new and better normal. So, reading. We all know that we have a problem. Our PISA results would show that we have a problem in terms of reading comprehension. That's why reading is very important. So ang mga teachers, what they do is they use concept organizer. So even if students do not read, they can still answer. So that's dangerous. So teachers, please mindful of the use of concept organizers as synthesizing strategy rather than yung pansarang gawain or strategy to teach the content. So unintentionally, we are teaching the students to skip reading. Okay? So number 2 is writing. So writing is a vanishing skill. It is very, very important. Unfortunately, it's a vanishing skill. So we have to revive students' writing skills in the new and better normal because it is the digital age. So we have to partner it with digital literacy. So communication, if you're English and Filipino teacher, so your main focus is how to equip our students with communication skills, which include writing, speaking, listening, and all that. And of course, digital literacy. Third skill or set of skills would be problem solving, reflective, and inventive thinking. One of the criticisms about our curriculum in the old normal is it emphasizes on thought knowledge, hindi inventive thinking. So yung declarative knowledge, which I will discuss later. So dito, for the new and better normal, we have to emphasize inventive thinking because there are many problems that our students have to have the skills to design solutions to address these problems. So yung mathematics, we just don't teach it for mathematics sake. We have to teach it in mathematics as a tool to understand problems. Okay. Life and productivity skills. Now we have a new fashion. We cannot go out unless we have our mask or our face shield. So yung mga TLE teachers dyan. Okay. I think we're in for the long haul. Maybe there has to be a revival of sorts of skills to develop a food garden. So these are life and productivity skills, and of course personal management and transversal skills. So in remote learning, students being self-directed would be very, very critical, and we have to provide them the skills to be that kind of student. Okay, so for step 3, we have to determine the topics that will deliver the identified need to know competencies. So yung mga nice to know, itabi po muna natin because it's not the ideal setup. Okay? So yung need to know lang muna. So in this, you have the competencies here, social studies competencies. So what would be the topic that would best deliver the competencies? And so on and so forth. So yung mga need to know na lang dito po, ito sa values education, mathematics, and so on and so forth. So once you do that, you have to ask these questions to yourself or to the group. Kailangan you have to have an instructional team across subject areas per grade level. Meaning to say, you have to have a grade 7 instructional team, grade 8 instructional team. And the members would come from the different subject areas. They comprise one team. Are there topics across subject areas that can be fused? And you will be surprised that perhaps you can fuse health and science, or science, health, and TLE, or music and social studies, values education, English and Filipino, you can fuse together, or PE and mathematics, or of course, mathematics and science, mathematics and TLE. So, yun po. Are there topics across subject areas that can be fused or integrated? Or are there topics that are related? So, that's why you have to have the banig. Yung banig ko po. Number 2, bali ganito po mangyayari yan. So, this is just an example. So, social studies, competency, ito yung topic niya, values education, yung topic niya. So, pwedeng mathematics could sometimes be a standalone topic. The topic in mathematics could be standalone. You'll have difficulty finding any related topic that's identified by other subject areas. So, pwedeng ganyan po. Okay? Then you have to ask this question. Are the topics best delivered synchronously, asynchronously, or project-based or performance-based? So, ganyan po yun. So, you have common, fused, integrated, or related topics from week 1 to week 12. So, which subject areas contribute to these fused topics? So, what is the best way to deliver yung topic na yon? Synchronous, webinar type, asynchronous, through modules, worksheets, or project-based, there is a particular project. Okay, that these different subject areas will their competencies are honed. I mean, the students will learn the competencies as they do the project. Okay. Or ito, kung independent topic, mostly I find yung mathematics normally independent topic siya. So, or sometimes science or social studies. So, independent siya, then decide, is it best delivered synchronously, asynchronously, or through modules, or project-based? Okay, step number 4. Okay, design a desired weekly home routine activities because the students are inside their home. Okay, use this to identify how the topics are best delivered. You can change this. This is just a suggestion, no? Itong what I have identified here, no? So it's personal management time, exercise and well-being time, on-screen time, life hacks, do-it-yourself time, lunch, reading and nap time, on-screen time, family time. Okay. So what you have here is a whole day. Of course, yung on-screen and the 2 on-screen time, it's the start and the closure of class. Okay, and in between doesn't have to be, that's off-screen, doesn't have to be using the internet. Okay, so ito po yung suggested on-screen time. I based this on the guidelines of the American Pediatric Association, and I think Australia also has issued a guideline for the screen time. So for early grades, so pre-K to grade 3, minimum per day is 30 minutes, maximum of 45. So that's why hatiin po ninyo, no? So 1 on-screen, bukas ang klase, off-screen, sara yung klase. And for grades 4 to 6, 45 minutes minimum and maximum to 1 hour. Grade 7 to 10, 1 hour. to 1 hour and a half, grades 11 to 12, 1 hour to 2 hours maximum, and college level, 2 hours to 3 hours. So, hindi po ito per subject. This is not per subject. This is per day. So, use the on-screen time for synchronous activities. And do not use the on-screen time for students to watch videos. No, 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 no. Flip the classroom. Let them watch the videos during their own time, okay? And then during the on-screen time, they can use the time for discussion. So flip the classroom, okay? Dito po ay a day. It is not per subject, okay? So, in order for us to make decisions on how to approach synchronous and asynchronous activities and what topics to include in our learning plan, you have to understand that the brain science has already established certain facts about how the brain learns. And I'll just want to review you on these brain science principles. So the first brain default is that we tend to forget. The brain tends to forget. And much of learning is dependent on memory. And there are two kinds of memory, long-term and short-term. So we leave the short-term behind. It's not important in education, not that important. What is important is the long-term memory. Kasi that's what makes us good teachers, if we are able to help the students wire their brain and remember the things that we teach them. Okay, that they learn the competencies that are in the curriculum. In the long-term memory, there are two kinds of long-term memory. Procedural memories, it's the knowing how, it's like riding a bicycle. It is long-term because even if you have not ridden the bicycle for 20 or 30 years, katulad ngayon, ang daming bumabalik sa pagbibisikleta, siguro sa umpisa wobbly ka, but eventually you get the hang of it. So you don't really forget how to ride a bicycle. The other type of memory is declarative, or long-term memories, declarative memories, knowing that, which is further divided into two: semantic memories. Unfortunately, much of the curriculum is about semantic memory, general knowledge. Kaya ako, I've forgotten about geometry, trigonometry. I do not know how I used it, but I learned it in high school. I memorized the periodic table, but now I don't know na. So that's semantic memory. It's just general knowledge. If teachers keep teaching semantic memories, how can you defeat Google? So we have to stop teaching yung semantic memories because they can Google this general knowledge. Okay, so our approach to teaching should be about procedural memories and episodic memories. So what are episodic memories? These are emotion-laden memories that we have, di ba? Yan yung mga hindi natin nakakalimutan. So brain default number 2. Emotions drive learning, attention, and meaning making. So if students, unlike what we learned, that we are rational beings, so much of learning pala is driven by our emotion. So think of this. Imagine our students just focusing on completing the modules. Walang emotion po doon. So they will be bored. They will definitely be bored. Because brain science has established that strong emotions help students in their learning. Okay? Kaya, ano man mga emotion yun? Masaya, malungkot, galit, takot, ano man emotion, basta merong emotion rather than flatline. Okay. Brain default number 3, the brain searches for meanings and patterns. So alam na natin to, no? This is why module writing would be very, very difficult because we have to assume where our students are. And in brain science, it has established that learning, yung new learning, can only be accommodated if that particular new knowledge is related to what we already know. So if you design a module that is so off from where the students are, they won't be able to learn it effectively. So that is why module making is very important. And that is why ito yung tinatawag na differentiated instruction. Eventually, while we start from common starting line, eventually we have to customize because as we implement our module, we'll realize that certain students are ahead, certain students get bored, so we have to adjust. Okay? Because brain science has established that we learn best when what we are about to learn is meaningful. Okay? So yung wiring ng brain, it will not wire unless it is meaningful to our current wiring. Brain default number 4, learning is aided by motion, novelty, challenge, scent, color, music, and aesthetics. So, why should we teach physical education through a module? We have to practice it. So, kung puro module, wala nang novelty. Okay? So, that is why we have to approach the way we deliver our curriculum in a very different, even radical manner compared to the face-to-face delivery mode. Hindi na po pwede yung ganon. And brain default number 5, the priority of the brain is to survive. And this is the time of the pandemic. That is why all teachers should be, in a way, guidance counselors. We have to understand where the students are coming from. Okay, so we have to manage the stress or they will achieve less. Hindi po pwede yung mga terror na teachers, this is not the time to be terrors. You can be firm, yes, you can be firm, pero hindi kayo po pwedeng magturo that your purpose is takutin ang mga bata. Especially in this time of the pandemic. It's just too much to handle. So that is why we have to understand that apart from academic learning, we also have to have social, emotional learning infused every step of the way. Okay. So this is an example of a weekly schedule. So kaya meron akong home routine activities. So they have to exercise, they have on-screen time, and they have to do something inside the home that by doing it, some competencies of some subject areas will be met. Okay? Reading must be emphasized. If they fall asleep, so be it, but it's important. So reading, and then you perhaps in reading, you guide them with some comprehension questions to help them understand. And then you have on-screen time again, where you can monitor what they did in the morning. So it's family time, creativity and productivity time, and so on and so forth. So unlike in the face-to-face, after our time, students are by themselves. In this remote learning, we have to sit down with the parents and discuss with them that this is going to be the home routine activities for their kids. And parents can also negotiate with you as to their activities, because at the end of the day, it's going to be the parents who will represent the teacher in the home. So step number 5, embed learning tasks in the weekly home routine activities that will achieve the competencies. So the question for you to ask is, which of the synchronous, asynchronous, and project-based activities are best suited for which home routine activities. So this is a sample ng grade 2 ito, week 1. Sample lang po ito. Okay, meron siyang science, no? Ang sample dito is a source of food or sources of food. Nagtanim ang mga bata, okay, tumulong sa kitchen, and so on and so forth. So, and that is science TLE for you. At kasama na din dyan yung English, yung polite expressions, and all that. So, that is why teachers have to sit together, because you will have to negotiate with one another how best to deliver the competencies in a manner that's not, in a way, hindi siya sequential eh. Kasi pag nagtuturo yung teacher, sequential siya eh. Logical. But something that they will do inside their home. Something that is meaningful. Something that is holistic. Okay. So, for, just to ensure that no competency is left behind, you can color code. You can see if you've identified the activities that you will ask the students to do, and see, color code, which competencies are being addressed. Okay. Pwede naman pong ganyan din. So this is one example ng dinesign ng DepEd. One of the speakers from the Department of Education, which was shared to me by someone. So dito may face-to-face ba sila? This is for the low risk area. So you could just imagine kung this is the student's schedule. Matutulog po ang bata. Distance learning, matutulog po talaga sila dyan. So, magkakaroon sila ng frozen shoulder sa ganitong schedule. Okay, baka yung grade 2 po natin, grade 1 natin, may frozen shoulders na. So, kailangan meron siyang action, like use the brain science, may action, may novelty, and so on. So, this is my proposed schedule for K-3. So, may on-screen time sa umaga, sa start ng class, and off-screen time. Okay? Dun sa on-screen time, you can just do PowerPoint presentation. Meron din ako yan, but this will not be covered by this. Yung mga sample PowerPoint presentation, very interesting, gawa ng mga teachers. And then, activity time, na meron silang project, or pwede rin namang may worksheet sila, or may pinapagawa ka sa bahay. Okay? So, for ano naman po ito, grade 4 to 6. Okay, grades 4 to 6. So, as you can see here, binibigyan natin, we give each subject the opportunity to have an on-screen time. But we give mathematics more time. Okay? And this is just a sample. Pwede nyo namang baguhin. Depende sa analysis of the competencies na yung pinagawa ko from step 1 to 4. This is for grade 7 to 10. Okay. So for instance, exercise and well-being time, it's asynchronous. So, MAPE, yung PE, exercise time. Okay? So, sabihin niya, hindi na ba, kakausapin ng PE teacher, yung mga bata, exercise na lang exercise? No, because on a Friday, the PE teacher or the MAPE teacher will talk to the students, will present the principles, and then will explain to them what they will do the next week for the exercise and well-being time from 7 to 8 a.m. So, edukasyon sa pagpapakatao, it's about well-being. And they have an opportunity during the off-screen time on Tuesday, 12:45 to 1:45, to discuss what will happen here. So, you can see even mathematics, binigyan ko ng 2 on-screen time, and then they have a do-it-yourself time. It could be in the form of a module, worksheet, or along with other subject areas. So, pwede naman ganito. Pwede naman po silang nag-usap-usap. Pwede silang naka-integrate. Okay? So ano ang schedule ng teacher? Kasi yan ang malaking usapin ngayon eh. That's a big issue now, no? So teachers, as per Magna Carta, 6 hours of teaching and 2 hours preparation. So ang much of what the teacher will do is coaching and academic support. During the synchronous time, or even asynchronous, kasi pwede siyang asynchronous in time kung wala naman kasi silang internet, pwede siyang recorded, no? Through USB, you just send them out. So yun po, no? That's the time the teacher will teach. You use the time to teach. But when students are on their own doing the asynchronous activities and the project-based activities that you ask them to do, the role of the teacher is that of coaching and academic support. It doesn't mean that the teacher will stop and maganda na buhay niya. No, magpapasap. No. Because aabangan mo ang mga bata. So it's the time for coaching and academic support. And the students must feel you. Okay? Kailangan nararamdaman ka ng mga bata. Okay? So ganito po this is an sample of the teacher schedule. So the modes of learner engagement would not be face-to-face. Immersion could be very, very difficult, and on-campus experience would be almost non-existent. So we deal with the students, we engage our students through synchronous, asynchronous, and performance-based activities. Okay. So in this kind of delivery mode, remote learning, whatever, kahit modular yan, it has to be customized. The target learning outcomes will be customized, context-based, self-paced, value-laden with focus on empathy, equity, collaboration, no? Even among teachers. Accountability, the students should feel accountable for their own learning, and we have to guide them how to be that learner. Participation and involvement and sustainability. It has to be problem solving and design oriented. It's going to be emergent. We have to allow teachers to calibrate the modules, to calibrate their lessons, and it will be data rich. So ito po yung mga tips sa paghahanda, no? So wag nating bagsakan ng gawain ng mga mag-aaral at mga magulang, yung sakto lang mga teachers. So gumawa ng aralin na hindi nakababad ang mag-aaral sa internet, hindi sila nakababad sa modules at worksheets. Merong variety. Okay. Mag-focus sa mga kaalaman at kasanayan na magagamit sa panahon ng pandemic. Tanungin mo sarili mo, bakit mo ituturo itong mga bagay na ito? Si Tiglat Pilaser, bakit yung mga pagbagsak ng mga imperyo? Mahilig siya ng mga social studies. Bakit? Why? Di ba? Tutukan ang mental health ng mga mag-aaral dahil hindi naman po sila mga robot. Gamitin ang mga gamit sa bahay bilang sangkap sa pagtuturo. Di ba? So pag naglinis sila ng air condition, that's science, that's mathematics, that's TLE. Okay? If you teach them how to cook, that's chemistry, that's health, that's science, that's TLE. So, gamitin ng mga gamit sa bahay bilang sangkap sa pagtuturo. Kaya, kailangan ng mga guro ay nag-uusap-usap. So, what are some of the expected problems in implementing our flexible learning options? Number one, remote learning is boring. The students might find themselves bored with the modules. Diba? So, make it interactive. Kailangan mo ng iba-iba. Novelty. Remember that. Novelty. It's a brain default. Merong technical difficulties, so you have to have a backup plan. So, mamaya, sasabihin ko sa inyo kung ano yung ginagawa ko. Sige, ngayon na lang. Yung ginagawa ko is I have a Facebook group for each of my classes, and then I live stream my Zoom. Okay? So, kung nawalan ng ilaw ang mga bata, doon nila pwedeng kunin sa Facebook. Tapos kung ako naman yung mawawalan, well, meron naman akong data. So maraming mga pwedeng backup plans na pwedeng gawin. Student in action due to time flexibility. Ito po, magiging anticipate, no? Because it will be flexible, tatama rin ng mga bata. So that is why kailangan the teacher will become stalkers. So set limit and send reminders, monitor, and give feedback. Okay? Kasi momentum po ang mawawala sa mga bata. So we're there to intervene. The teachers should be there to intervene. There is lack of human contact. Yeah, that's true. That is why you have to provide students with personal attention, organized fora, and social media. Use social media. And they cannot practice what they're learning. So that is why you have to design project-based activities so that they'll be able to make something, to kamay, gagamit sila ng kamay, gagamit sila ng isip nila, kikilos sila. Okay? And there is a possibility that there will be mediocre quality. That is why I would suggest that we ask the teachers to approach their 2020-21 school year from an action research perspective. So action research, what worked, what didn't work, and then calibrate. Okay. So, and do not be too hard on ourselves. Nobody's prepared for something this scale. So for remote learning, this scale. Lucky. So it's not only the Philippines, even developed countries have similar problems. Hindi prepared ang mundo. And so don't be too anxious. Manage expectations. Okay? So, like I said, there is now a reimagining of the teacher's role in remote learning, in home-based instruction. So we are now coaches. We are coaches of our students. So coaching as teaching. So teachers who are watching me, you have to take ownership of the situation. Own it. This is not the principal's call. This is not DepEd's call, central office. So classroom teacher, ikaw yan. Ikaw ang ano dito. Ikaw ang re-renda nito. Empower students to lead their own learning. So now is the time to teach the Filipino learner to manage their own learning. Provide students meaningful lessons. Yung mga declarative knowledge po natin, kailangan has to be meaningful. Connect experiences and subjects, the subject areas. We have to put a stop to very compartmentalized, alienating lessons. Diba? Nakakatuwa lang na alam nila, but there's no practice in real life. Okay, monitor every learner's progress, customized learning for each student. So ito na po yung individualized instruction. So yung mga principal dito, mga head teacher, kung ang teacher, sinabi niya yung dinesign niya ay para sa lahat, nakakaisang buwan na kayo, there is something wrong. Because definitely, lalabas yung iba-iba, uniqueness of the student. So better call that teacher to account. No? Medyo maghinala ka na hindi siya nag-feedback, hindi niya inaaral. Kasi it's going to be customized lesson. Use technology as a tool and not the goal of learning. Okay? So sometimes kasi we talk about learning management system, we talk about many mga sexy technologies, but at the end of the day, these are just tools. Okay? And be mindful of the digital divide I just discussed with you. So empathize with and listen to students. So yung coaching ng ang cycle of coaching, we are coaches, right? So magkaiba po yun, yung as teacher and as coach. So as coach, we have to set the goal for the students, for the individual learner. Monitor or assess them, give them feedback, you analyze the data, personalize the learning plan. Again, I'm very emphatic on that. Build alliance or learning network. So you don't know everything. That's why you have to talk to your colleagues. If you're in the social studies department, go to your, and it's about science, it's about TLE, you better talk to them. Or if it requires experts outside your school, our setup now is you can optimize the Facebook, social media to access these experts, di ba? Mas madali. Build alliance with your different stakeholders, engage them. Kasi sometimes a particular student may be interested in something that is beyond your expertise. So that is why you have to access the expertise of others. So it's the time for teachers to network, okay, to network with others others from outside our own field, and reassess if calibration works. So cycle po siya until this particular learner achieves the goal. So mga kapatid sa education sector, the new normal, as we call our existing or present experience, is not the best situation for everyone. And it is not our destination. It is just a transition. But if you think that we will go back to the pre-COVID setup, you are also wrong. So the old normal is face-to-face delivery as default, and it's so disruption prone. Okay, disruption prone. COVID-19 may not be the last pandemic that we will ever experience. That is why we cannot go back to the old normal. Especially in the country, the Philippines, we get visited by typhoons. Even if there is no typhoon, there is a flood event that could disrupt schools. There could be volcanic eruptions, earthquake, fire, diba? So there are many things that could disrupt the face-to-face delivery default of the old normal. And so the new normal, because it is where we are, no? Disruption is where we are, it's just responding to the disruption. So we have to survive COVID. And that is why we think of flexible learning options. But our destination should be the better normal. It's still shapeless. That is why we have to contribute to shaping it. But I suppose it's going to be seamless, where students can choose anytime to go face-to-face or to go flexible. It's not going to be about curriculum. It's about learning playlist. Because the curriculum, if you think of the curriculum as we know it, it takes years to develop the curriculum, to calibrate the curriculum. Pero by that time, because knowledge generation is so fast-paced, kaya napag-iiwanan ang curriculum. That's always that mismatch between the outside world's expectation of what our graduates should have. There's always that divide, the mismatch. I think it's because the curriculum is so static. It is designed to be static. That is why from curriculum being teacher-driven, it should be learner-driven. So it's like a playlist, mamimili ang mga bata. And it will be disruption-proof. That is going to be the better normal. So I have given you the how-tos. Our toolkit provides you with procedures, with practical steps to give you the confidence to push the button, to reset your school, to survive until to survive this pandemic, but more importantly, to thrive beyond the pandemic. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yeban, for that. I was describing it earlier as a walkthrough, but it sounded more like a sprint. Thank you very much, Dr. Yeban. It's a sprint preparing us for a long haul marathon to the better normal, as you said it. It might be pleasing to know that joined by colleagues, educators from all over the country. I have been checking up on a lot of feedback, and we get it from the north down to the south. And there are a couple of questions fielded here. If I may, one from Portia Atienza Egben is, can they change the online hours? Would the teachers have the liberty to do so, given these recommendations? And a related question is that how many learning areas would have to be covered each day? That is from Irene Telet.
Yes, you can change yung number of on-screen time, but it should be, I hope that you will respect the suggestion of experts on the matter. For instance, the American Pediatric Association, they have set some maximum number of screen time, but you can definitely change. As regards how many learning areas, it depends on your analysis. You have to go through it. Okay, so sometimes it's just 1 or 2 or 3, but you have to go through the templates.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ieban. The third question I had was that more about the materials and the presentation shared today. And I guess I can share with our friends who are watching that these are all available in the toolkit that is produced by the team, and it's downloadable from a number of sites, the Cocopeya site, as well as the PEA and the PAPSCO site. So friends, at this point, may I ask you to join me in thanking once again our colleague, Dr. Felicia Yeban, for that very informative but certainly very challenging presentation. Thank you again, Dr. Yeban.
Salamat po.
As mentioned, we are joined today, or firstly, in our toolkit, the one who wrote it was Mr. Bon Samuel Atienza, who is a member of our team. Unfortunately, he would not be able to join us for today's webinar. And on his behalf, we are fortunate to have Mr. Carlo Fernando, who is Project Development Officer 4 of the Digital Education for Digital Education at the Department of Information and Communication Technology. He is also a senior lecturer at Miriam College Graduate School and has taught courses in UP Diliman and in De La Salle University. He finished his master's degree in Learning Sciences Technology, a research degree from the University of Sydney, while his bachelor's degree in literature he completed from the Philippine Normal University in Manila. So, welcome, Carlo.
Hi, good morning po sa ating lahat. Muli maraming salamat po sa PAPS Aspire team. Thank you very much for having invited me to this very prestigious happening or webinar for this morning. I'm very excited to step into the shoes of Bon Samuel Atienza. As Mr. Bennett Benosa has also mentioned, Bon could not go or attend this particular webinar. And so he also sends his apologies. However, I would also like to encourage everyone to please also go through Bon's parts in the provided toolkit. From the education imperative for the new normal, planning for flexible learning, because Bon has provided you very technical but also very useful knowledge when it comes to the minimum or the maximum specifications, technical specifications that are needed in order to actually proceed and help you in designing teaching and learning experiences for your students and inside your school. It labels there the number of or the minimum number of bandwidth speed and internet connectivity that you actually need, and also the amount of seconds down to that last detail, so that you can actually really respond to the needs and the context of your learners. But for this particular talk, what I will be sharing is also an expansion and as really complementary to what Dr. Yeban has already delivered, which is to really anchor the use of technology within the realm of learning sciences. Paano nga ba natututo ang mga tao? Paano nga ba natututo ang mga bata? Because at the end of the day, as also Dr. Yeban has articulated earlier, tool lamang po ang technology. It is not the end-all be-all in the online learning paradigm, but it is just a tool to facilitate the learning for our kids. I'm very sure, and also based on the results of the survey that were also facilitated and led by Dr. Ohena and Dr. Zaira, that you are also very familiar with learning technologies that are also made available for free, either for free or on a paid subscription to these various digital tools. So some of these digital tools can be accessed offline. Hindi po kailangan ng broadband or ng mobile data in order for you to access these digital tools. Some of them might be PowerPoint presentations or Microsoft Word, Google, Microsoft Excel, etc. But at the same time, a lot of online tools are also available and accessible to you. Particularly though, I'm very sure that you're well familiar with Facebook, as well as Google Gmail, and also Coursera, Moodle, Zoom, etc. And these are very familiar tools already for you. But at the same time, what is it really? How can we actually maximize the use of these technologies so that we can truly respond to the needs of our learners? So one question that actually springs to mind is, how do teachers teach in the 21st century? Ano po ba yung mga pangangailangan ng mga knowledge domains? Ano yung mga kailangang malaman ng isang guro para tunay na makapagturo sa bagong normal? And this has been provided by Mishra and Kohler in 2013, which is the very seminal and ubiquitous framework of the Technology, Pedagogical, and Content Knowledge Framework, or the TPAC framework. Kung makita niyo po dito sa TPAC framework, there are essentially 4 components. So the first one po is the technological knowledge, meaning ito po yung knowledge whether you know how to operate a laptop or the Microsoft Word or Facebook. Do you know how to log in? Can you remember your password? So essentially, those are very technological and technical skills that will help you in understanding the use or the affordance of the tool. The second one, of course, the one in blue, is the content knowledge. content knowledge is essentially your understanding and your knowledge about the various subject matter topics. For example, do you know that Romeo and Juliet was written by William Shakespeare? Do you know that Dead Stars was written by Paz Marquez Benitez? Or do you know that the president of the Philippines is President Rodrigo Duterte? So essentially, that is a content knowledge that you actually need in order for you to teach your particular lesson. So whether it be science or history or language. And at the same time, hindi po sufficient that you just know how to use Facebook, because that will be under technological knowledge. Or it's not also only sufficient that you know that William Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet, because that is under content knowledge. But at the same time, you should be able to understand and relate both the technological knowledge, the one in pink, and the content knowledge, the one in blue, to the context of your learners. So that will essentially be under the pedagogical knowledge. Do you really know how to create assessments? Do you really know how to create learning experiences for your students? Do you really know how to, simplify very complex ideas? Because at the end of the day, if you're able to condense and if you're able to crystallize very complex ideas to the context of your learners, such that Romeo and Juliet really talks about love, or that Romeo and Juliet really talks about the danger of young love, and really contextualizing it within how your students truly understand it. Essentially, that is pedagogical knowledge. And the combination and the interplay of technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge essentially forms the technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge. Usually, whenever teachers and researchers actually talk about the TPAC framework, they also somehow forget the fourth major component. And this is the dotted lines, or the broken lines outside of the TPAC framework, which is essentially the contexts that we actually put, or that we actually where we apply our knowledge on technology, pedagogy, and content. According to Harris, Phillips, Kohler, and Rosenberg, yung pong TPAC framework, well, of course, integrated po siya. Kasi, for example, when we have been teaching mathematics for quite some time now, it's quite impossible, especially for higher levels in college and then also in senior high school, it's quite impossible or actually difficult to teach calculus or pre-calculus without the use of a calculator. So the knowledge on how to operate a calculator is primarily technological knowledge. But at the same time, whenever you also operate the multiple cosine and all the different buttons in that particular calculator, and use that particular tool in order to resolve a real life world problem, essentially you're applying a lot of the different knowledges. So the TPAC framework is essentially integrated such that it's quite unimaginable, really, I guess, to create a learning experience without the interplay of the various three domains. The second one is that it is situated in a sense that whatever we actually know on this particular context might not necessarily be contextualized or might not necessarily be useful in another context. So when I listened to one TED Talk of Pasi Sahlberg, when he was also discussing why Finland, for the longest time, has been performing very well in the Program for International Student Assessment, or PISA, bakit nga ba whenever we also really talk about education, it's always Finland or it's always Japan or Singapore? But Pasi Sahlberg is also saying that it's not only necessary that the Finnish teachers are the best in what they do, but it's also within the context of the Finnish education system. So what Pasi Sahlberg was also saying is that when you actually import a Finnish teacher from Finland to the United States or to other countries, that teacher might not necessarily perform in his or her best in comparison to when he or she was teaching in Finland. So I guess the metaphor for this is that when a teacher from public school, a public elementary school, teaches in another, say for example, in a private elementary school, his TPAC knowledge might not necessarily fit to the context of that particular school. And so the third characteristic of the TPAC framework is that it is dynamic. Dynamic in the sense that we constantly change our TPAC, we constantly change the technological knowledge that we know, because contexts necessarily change. So given this particular new normal that we are experiencing, as Dr. Yeban has also illustrated to us earlier, and towards our achievement of the better normal, we constantly should remind ourselves to constantly learn and constantly reflect that the contexts wherein we learn and wherein we teach necessarily might need a new definition of technological knowledge, of pedagogical knowledge, and content knowledge. Phillips et al. Has also illustrated to us the various context components, and what are these components that necessarily shape how we actually use technology in our teaching. So I would also just like to highlight that our prior experience with technology, number 4, might, so for example, when we were also used to teaching in face-to-face sessions with our students, the context of that would necessarily change because of the COVID situation that we are in. So sadly, for example, while we know how to operate a desktop computer, the computer lab that are permanently installed in schools and the knowledge that we know on how to operate that computer lab inside schools would need to change because learning and teaching shifts from school to home. So essentially, because of this particular change in context, our technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge would necessarily change as well. So because of this, we are really faced with an entire dilemma or an entire challenge as to really reshaping and really resolving and addressing the needs of our learners and our co-teachers. So this is just one simple illustration. So kung before po, sanay na sanay po tayong magturo sa loob ng classroom face-to-face in front of 50 kids with our projector and our white screen fixed at the back and really teaching, that might necessarily change because we need to understand how to use the whiteboard function in Zoom, or we need to know now what Google Slides are, or we need to know how to use Viber or WhatsApp to really create an interactive learning experience for our kids. So as our context change from A to B, how do we then actually see teaching with the use of technology in the new normal? Initially, this is also how TPAC can be illustrated, that we have various configurations of TPAC. There are some teachers na magaling po talaga sa paggamit ng technology. They're very savvy. They really know how to maximize the use of Viber or WhatsApp, or they can create a mobile application for that are suited for iPad or Android. But there are also some teachers naman po that are well aware, or that are well versed when it comes to pedagogy. They really know how to ask questions. They really can engage with learners. And so there are various configurations on that. And according to Mishra and Kohler as well, there are some teachers that are well versed naman in content. So they really know how they probably can differentiate the various elements in the periodic table, or they can really compare Marxism and feminism, etc. So in terms of the content knowledge, they will be the go-to person whenever you also have particular content-specific questions. But in the new normal, all of the contexts of all of our teachers will necessarily change because of COVID-19. So how do we help them? according to Holmes and Mockler, dito na po papasok yung technology din natin, and really understanding the affordances of our education technologies. Hindi po enough that teachers need knowledge of technology, pedagogy, and content. Hindi po sufficient. The teachers would just know about Facebook or would just know about how to ask a question or would just know about iambic pentameters in William Shakespeare's sonnets. What teachers actually need to do, apart from knowing, is they need to participate in collaborative practice. So what we also envision in the new normal, apart from personalizing, so bukod po sa pagsasarili at really embracing that particular challenge of designing and creating learning experiences for our particular students, teachers also need to participate amongst a learning action cell or within a community of practice. So we can also see perhaps teachers in science really collaborating and discussing, hey, paano mo nga ba tinuturo yung matter? So another teacher from another class or from another school can also participate in that collaborative practice. One way that has also opened up because of this pandemic is the participation of a lot of our teachers in Facebook groups. So if we can make a Facebook group purposive, meaningful, and also informative for our teachers, then they can really learn together and really activate their particular previous technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge so that they can recontextualize it and refit it to the current situation that we are in. Because of the participation of teachers in collaborative practice, then they can achieve innovative practice and truly technology integration. So I guess I just really needed for us to step back, and apart from not really first deep diving into the technicalities of technology, we first need to step back and reflect that the most important component of the online learning paradigm that we are in is not necessarily the technology that we are using, but the teachers, what they know, and how they will be able to use what they know to the current context so that they can respond to the learners and their needs. So it's really the human component of technology that would really bring successful practices and that would really shape really exciting and interactive interactions amongst the class. So here we are in the current context, the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact not only to higher education, but also to basic education and to secondary education. Because as also seen in the news, in spread across traditional and social media, that we really are facing a lot of challenges in the educational landscape. So for example, the DepEd is very proactive as well in institutionalizing the learning continuity plan and also with the use of the MELCs or the most essential learning competencies. But as Dr. Yeban has also illustrated, we really face the digital divide. So hindi lang po enough that whatever the national government is saying is the only modality that we are using, or probably the DepEd Commons, but whether we can actually make use of our local resources and the resources that our students and their parents already know and already have access to. Because at the end of the day, whenever we design interventions, what we really hope to do is for that intervention to address a problem and not necessarily create further problems such as widening the digital divide. So yun po sana yung gusto natin ding gawin as teachers and also as designers of learning experiences, that whenever we think of a particular intervention, isipin po natin, yung intervention po ba na gagamitin ko, makakatulong po ba siya talaga sa aking mga estudyante? Or makakatulong lamang ito sa certain percentage of students but not necessarily to the majority of the students who I will also engage in the learning process. And at the same time, we also face challenges when it comes to cybersecurity. So this is one affordance, or this is one feature of the paid learning management system, because we can actually further ensure the security of our learners, because whenever you have a paid learning management system po, nagagamay natin yung mga policies that govern the use of that particular learning management system, and at the same time customize the features within that LMS. In comparison to other free free apps that we can use, that might really cause, or that might really I guess worry or trouble some of us because of the cybersecurity concerns. But if our question really is access, or if our question really is really going to the needs and the context of our students, then the free applications can definitely help us address that particular concern. And we also face challenges in teaching, in teacher training, etc. That's why I guess we would also like to thank again PAYAC and PAPSCU for organizing the free webinars for our teachers. And we are here, me from the government sector, Dr. Oena, Sir Bennett, Dr. Feliz, Ma Marilyn, and Dr. Zaira, really helping together, helping each other together, so that we can really train and really support our teachers the best way we can. Because at the end of the day, this is also the normal that we would want to embrace, that our learners need us now more than ever. So I guess the challenge is, while we also face a lot of emotional challenges, we sometimes get stressed because of a lot of news popping up in our social media feeds, or because we're also concerned as to how to really address the needs of our learners, or how to truly create an effective enrollment process for our schools. At the end of the day, while we teachers are also troubled, just imagine the stress and the mental health concerns that our learners are experiencing or facing right now. But also a message to the school heads and to the deans that are attending this particular webinar. We need each other now more than ever. So our teachers truly need all the support that we can provide them. Our teachers also deserve further support, probably with really creative and inventive funding mechanisms within our schools. We need each other now more than ever. So it's really a partnership of all the different people, because the burden and the challenge of really addressing the needs of our learners is democratized across other actors in the system. And this may include civil society organizations, the private sector, school management, peers and communities, international actors, and of course, the teachers, the learners, and their parents. UNICEF has also provided this proposed solution. So the basic question really is, the burning question really is, how can we truly address the needs of our learners given this pandemic? Given all the resources that we can have access to, how can I decide whether that the use of that particular tool can address the need of the learner? So UNICEF has provided this decision tree framework. I just fit it into this into this slide for the PowerPoint. So if the question is, what are the technologies that we can use to deliver a message or transmit information? We can use digital tools. So we can use the laptop, the tablet, the cell phones, or if that might deem a bit expensive, we can also use TV and radio-based teaching. There are a lot of providers now that are making their content for free via radio and TV. One particular and leading example for this is Knowledge Channel Foundation, wherein they are still accessible in other cable networks. But at the same time, all the knowledge channel videos can be accessed via YouTube. So in schools, we can probably download those videos and put them in a hard drive or in a flash drive, and then we can probably invest in that if that might be a solution that is good or viable. Then we can distribute those USBs or those hard drives for the use of our learners and our teachers. So we can probably use that particular modality. Or at the same time, this is what a lot of local government units are also doing. So apart from investing in heavy digital equipment, they are also thinking of ways as to how they can deliver printed and handouts from the school to the barangay hall, to probably the sari-sari store, to the homes. So they can create a policy or they can create a mechanism so that they can deliver one paper or one set of materials from a central point to the learner and vice versa. At the end of the day, all of our international actors are also saying that the disruption brought by COVID-19 is a first in its kind, especially with the demands of higher education, of a higher quality of education. Thus, at the end of the day, while we are also experimenting on the use of these different tools, let us also vow and let us also make sure to use documentation practices, such as the use of SMS messaging apps, and also in encoding different reports, so that we can really collate and curate best practices that we can continuously refine and that we can continuously learn from as we proceed. Just some principles in using online tools. For later po, so quick background lang, I gave a quick background on teacher training and on the context of COVID-19. But at the same time, very simple principles that I hope you could remind yourselves after this particular talk. So una po is that whenever we also talk about online learning, hindi po dapat natin priority yung salitang online, because at the end of the day, there are other alternative learning delivery modes that we can definitely use and activate. So not only online, we can also use offline modalities with the use of SMS or with the use of text. Mamaya po magpapakita ako ng mga recorded screen caps or recorded phone, yung mga phone interactions po, para malaman nyo po kung ano yung mga examples from other countries that we can also learn here in the Philippines. So there are other alternative delivery modes. We can also use delivered home-based packages for our learners. Because at the end of the day, whenever we also discuss online learning, dapat pong mas mangibabaw yung salitang learning than online. Because at the end of the day, whenever we also revisit the policies, issued both by CHED and DepEd, nakalagay po talaga doon that the most integral part of our learning experience are the learners. I would just like to read one sentence from the CHED handbook on the typology of outcomes-based education. The CHED defines OBE, outcomes-based education, as an approach that focuses and organizes the educational system around what is essential for all learners to know, value, and be able to do to achieve a desired level of competence. So whenever we also think of using technology in our context, the first person or the first question that we need to ask ourselves is that, kamusta na kaya ang aking mga estudyante? It's not necessarily a question of ano kaya yung learning management system na gagamitin ko. Because the question of the learning management system must come after we have really considered all of the components and the context as to where our learners are. So if that is higher education, this is basic education, both elementary and secondary. So according to the Republic Act 10533 or the K-12 or the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013, our pedagogies must be constructivist, inquiry-based, reflective, collaborative, and integrative. Wala pong nakalagay dito sa batas ng K-12 that the only modality or the only tool that we can use is online. Because at the end of the day, the learning experience is really what should be prioritized. So our learning experience, even up until this pandemic, should still remain constructivist, inquiry-based, reflective, collaborative, and integrative. Because at the end of the day, if we can also see the framework of K-12 and the exit pathways from senior high school, which are higher education, entrepreneurship, or employment, technology is just one part of the component. So information, media, and technology skills is just one of the components of the entire K-12 system. So as much as we would still want to really create a full and comprehensive learning experiences for our kids, we should also still be able to tap the learning and innovation skills, the effective communication skills, and the life and career skills so that we can truly lead them and shepherd them towards the various exit pathways that they can proceed to at the end of the education cycle. This is just one paradigm that I constructed so that we can also see the amount of agency that we are given so that we can respond to the needs of our learners. So let us also understand the different policy standards and guidelines that are issued by the Department of Education, because as they have said and they have reiterated, the learner is the most important component of the education landscape, and then we can understand the curriculum. Hindi po dapat natin babalikan or pupuntahan, yun nga po, yung question on technology, but really understanding first ano nga ba yung binibigay, at can we actually consider that from the national government, from the regional, from the division. And then we can create from in the yellow part of the triangle. Then we can create various online activities and strategies for kids. Then we can create instructions and tasks, because as teachers, our primary agency is really creating these learning experiences. But at the same time, the policymakers and the school heads should also make sure that the curriculum that they are using is still governed or is still aligned to the learner-centered and constructivist policy that are laid out defining the education landscape. So yung una po nating principle is that really whenever we talk of online learning, mas nangingibabaw po yung salitang learning. Ito naman pong pangalawa, whenever we think now of the technology that we would want to use, it's not necessarily a matter of what, but how we use that particular technology. So yun lang po yung two principles na gusto ko pong tandaan natin, because we have also been participating in a lot of different webinars. So I made it very simple for you to understand. So yung second naman po natin is that the how should be more important than the what. So Dr. Yeban has also briefly discussed the learning theories behind the use of successful online learning experiences. And she has used from the metaphor of brain sciences, from the use of declarative knowledge to procedural knowledge. Essentially, yun din naman po yung nakasulat dito sa learning theories natin. That at the end of the day, whenever we create learning experiences, we would want it to be constructivist. Constructivist in the sense that meron po tayong recognition on the knowledge that learners already have. Hindi po sila tabula rasa. Kung meron po silang alam, and they can share that knowledge to other learners, and the interaction between the two students should be considered in the learning experience that we are creating. So, babalikan lang po natin that this is what we would want to achieve, and not particularly instructionism. Instructionism in the sense that learning does not consider that our learners would know things or would know knowledge. In the sense that there is no reference to internal states, meaning kapag naibigay ng estudyante yung output na hinihingi natin, and yung itinuro natin, memorization, yun lang pong lower level order thinking skills, not necessarily as allowing the students to ask questions amongst one another, then the instruction is primarily from teacher to student and the story ends there. Parang wala na pong interaction within the actors in the system. Because if we would want to create a constructivist experience for our class, ito po yung gusto natin sanang gawin, that the learner has interaction with other learners would still interact with the teacher, and the teacher would of course interact with the learner, and vice versa. So paikot-ikot po yung interaction amongst the three actors, the ones in green. Hindi po yung, for example, we would create a webinar, and at the end of the day, the questions po, we have a question as an audience. We have a question. We type that question into the comment section of the webinar, and then we include that with the hopes of the interaction being very dynamic between the audience and the speaker. And it's not only the speaker to the audience, and then the story ends there. What we really hope to do is to really foster an interactive community of learners so that learning becomes exciting and also useful. Hindi po yung parang isang tao lang po yung nagsasalita, tapos nakikinig lang po yung mga tao mga tao at wala po silang sense of interaction, not only with the speaker but also with themselves, that they cannot like or that they cannot reply to the comments and the questions that are posed by other members. So ang gusto po natin gawin is a really lively discussion. And if this is what we would want in a learning experience, that our learners can ask questions, that our learners can submit outputs and then receive that output back, sana po ganun pa rin yung gawin natin sa sitwasyon na ito. Gamitin po natin yung technology para po magampanan po natin na maging ganito ka-dynamic and interactive yung ating learning. And at the same time, if that learning experience is what we hope to do, we also should foster that particular teacher training component with teachers, other teachers, and the school administration. Because we would also want to foster a community or an environment wherein the teacher can also ask the school admin questions. And the school admin is also open to answering the question from the teacher. And it's not necessarily the school admins just providing or just laying out all of the policies that should be communicated, but not necessarily listening or responding to the inquiries of our teachers. So for example, this is the usual scenario when we think of the online tools that we would want to use. Two very familiar tools for us might be, some of you might know this, the Google Classroom and Zoom. So Google Classroom is a learning management system which allows the interaction for asynchronous discussions. So magpo-post po kayo ng discussion thread, pwede pong mag-respond doon yung mga estudyante, but also on a self-paced mechanism. Hindi po kailangang mag-online sila from 9:30 to 10:30 for them to participate in a class. So it's very asynchronous. And at the same time, while we know of Google Classroom, we might also know of Zoom. So Zoom is a synchronous teleconference tool that you can use to foster interaction, live interaction between participants or between people. So okay, alam po natin gamitin yung Google Classroom and Zoom. But at the same time, if the understanding and the use of those tools, both Google Classroom and Zoom are placed within a traditional instructionist paradigm, meaning teacher to learner lang po yung interaction. Mga example po dito might be the learner uses the chat box, fourth bullet po, the learner uses the chat box to ask a question but the teacher is not able to recognize this, nor any of his or her classmates. So kung ganito lang po yung interaction, one way lang, it does not necessarily, number one, address the needs of the learners per se completely, and number two, might not necessarily provide useful interaction from the learner to the teacher. Kasi at the end of the day, learners can have questions. Learners can also clarify or can probably ask further information about a topic. So, what do we then hope to do? What we hope to do is to use technology, both Zoom and Google Classroom, so that there will be interaction from the teacher to the learner, given na po yun, but also at the same time from the learner to the teacher. So ano pong itsura nito? The teacher and learner use Google Classroom and Zoom to ask questions to each other, to exchange files, text, audio, or video, or to listen to each other's thoughts and opinions. Because at the end of the day, what we also hope might happen is that teachers learn from the learner. So natututo din po tayo, ito yung pinagdadaanan ng estudyante, ito yung feedback ng aking estudyante sa paraan ng aking pagtuturo, or ito yung burning question pa din from the side of the learner that can also help me in shaping and crafting a more responsive learning experience on the second day. So let us use the feedback that will be provided by the learner to the teacher. So at the end of the day, whenever we use Zoom, hindi po matatapos sana yung learning experience na lahat ng tao doon sa Zoom platform, naka-mute lang po sila tapos isang tao lang pinagsasalita. Or whenever we use WhatsApp, naka-disallow po yung pagbibigay ng responses or replies from the students to the teacher. Because what we hope to do nga po, and this is what the law says and the curriculum say, is that we could create and we should create a really dynamic and interactive experience for our students. Because at the end of the day, the learners can also learn with their co-learners. And this really fosters collaboration and constructivist experience. So in a face-to-face class, Michelle would necessarily ask a question to Ryan. Ryan, kamusta ka na sa essay? Can you probably help me with the subject-verb agreement assignment that we have? Kasi I have questions about the use of is or are. So dapat po ganun ka-dynamic din yung interaction amongst learners that they will be allowed to ask questions to each other, to reply or share or give virtual high fives to their classmates, because that will really create a more authentic experience with the use of technology. One best example that I've seen on this is the use of emoji and the use of GIF. Yung GIF po yung parang mga picture na gumagalaw. So, for example, learner, imagine po natin sila, they are in a Facebook group, private Facebook group for grade 3 manga. So sila lang po yung nandoon sa loob ng Facebook group na yon. Then when one learner posts or one learner reports on a particular topic, say for example the topic on COVID. So a report on COVID. And then he or she reports on what COVID is and how COVID can be transmitted. So that's the report on science. What the other learners can do is to like or to also post GIFs or to also include emojis. So yun po yung parang pwede natin gamiting assessment tracker or motivation so that nabuboost din po yung interaction amongst the class, and at the same time with the use of relevant and really exciting technologies that we can use. At the end of the day, this is what we hope our students should ask themselves. And the teachers also should ask themselves, as a teacher, do I just want my students to receive information? Kasi pwede naman po na one-way interaction lang talaga. Second, do I want my students to think on their own? Meaning, magbibigay ako ng input, pero I will also give parang some cooking time, brewing time for the kids. They don't necessarily need to be in a synchronous discussion. They can think on their own, and at the same time, when they are ready, they can submit the output on a very specific time. Or the third one, do I want my students to work together? Do I want them to go on their own, think on their own, and then collaborate, not necessarily asking help from the teacher? Do I want them to create a project on their own time without my assistance? So what is the learning experience that we hope to create? Kasi po, ito pong tatlong questions will guide us in deciding the use of the technological tools. So what are the online tools? Before po doon, I would also like to also give acknowledgement again to what Bon Samuel Atienza has written there, that this is the standard bandwidth requirement at home if we have the X number of users in our particular home. Kasi po, what we can also foresee is that the learners will need to have access to the internet, to the Wi-Fi. And if inside the home, there are 1 to 2 children or 3 to 4 children that are using and sharing that bandwidth inside their home, what is the standard bandwidth that we can invest in? So this is what we can communicate as school admin and as teachers to the parents of our kids. So if there are 3 to 4 children or 3 to 4 users, let's say in that household, meron pong isang grade 4 student, 1 grade 11 student, and 1 4th-year college student. So the standard bandwidth must necessarily be from 3 Mbps to above. Let's say 3 Mbps to 5 Mbps or 10 Mbps. Pwede na po nilang paghatian yung 3 Mbps na yun sa loob ng bahay. So if there are, let's say naman, 5 to 6 children or 5 to 6 users in that home, so isang elementary, isang high school, isang senior high school, isang college, at isang teacher sa loob ng bahay na yun, ang pangangailangan ng standard bandwidth must be from 5 Mbps to above. So ito po, kung i-explore nyo po yung toolkit that is also provided to you by the PAPSCO Aspire team, you can also see and be guided as to what are the technological requirements that I really need so that we can create a more guided experience. So going back to the online tools, what are the online tools? So first one is the learning management system. So there are free and there are also paid learning management systems. Essentially po yung difference ng libre at bayad is that maaaring may maximum number of users that can only go to that learning management system. The second one is really the customization. Yun po yung pinakamalaking factor for the paid LMS. That you can customize, you can restrict certain websites, you can just put a particular widget or put a particular application within that learning management system. That might not necessarily be free within that free learning management system. So that one particular example for that would be Moodle. So there are paid Moodle subscriptions, and you can highly customize it based on what your school really needs. So these are the examples of learning management systems. Number 1, Google Classroom, Moodle, Schoology, Canvas, and Henyu e-learning. So these are learning management systems we can use. But if we ask the questions, if I were a teacher and I just want to use the learning management system for my students to receive information, then we can do that. We can allow them to view online content. So magpo-post po tayo ng video or magsasend po tayo ng PDF file within that learning management system, and then we would not necessarily create a reply thread, or we don't need to create a discussion thread. So we just want them to receive information. We can do that. Or at the same time, we would want the students to think on their own. So we can ask them to download files from the learning management system. The download po nila from Google Classroom. Tapos, kapag po nagamit na po nila yung Wi-Fi or nakapag-akasa po sila ng Monday morning, they will then probably use that PDF file from Tuesday to Wednesday, use that to think on their own, to reply and really respond to the worksheets that are embedded in the file that they downloaded from Monday, and then submit the output on a Thursday. So in that way, they can be allowed to think on their own remotely at their own pace without the use of too much Wi-Fi, so that mare-respond pa rin naman po nila at matututo rin po sila on their own. Because if we're also thinking of really expensive modalities, such as the constant use of synchronous discussions, maaaring hindi po kasi yun akma doon sa konteksto ng ating mga estudyante. So if there are restrictions to there are, let's say, 30% of our kids could not afford mobile data and they have a certain gigabyte lamang po to consume, then we can probably create different modalities that are also contextualized within our learners. Number 3, if we want them to work together, at the end of the day, if this is what we hope to do, then we can allow them to work together by providing productivity tools or online links within the learning management system. So yung productivity tool po, for example, is Google Doc or a Google Sheet. Gagawa po sila ng presentation or ng file within that productivity tool that is also hyperlinked within the learning management system. So ito po yung example noong learning management system that I used when I was teaching in Miriam. So doon po, I had, say for example, 4 classes, because these are intensive classes, around 8 hours per class on a Saturday. And these are the things that I required them to download so that they can be allowed to think on their own. So meaning very cognitivist yung ganoong perspective. So for example, this is the learning management system. I can create a discussion thread for a class, and then I can also link their various PDF files and also a discussion thread that they may want to respond to within that particular time frame. So you can open a thread so you can still accept replies, or you can close a thread so that replies would not necessarily be accepted on a given time frame. So isipin lang po natin lagi na kapag po gagamit tayo ng online tools, it should also be accessible. It should not further cause a digital divide to our learners that, okay, the only modality that I will be using for my class is Zoom. What will happen to the 40% of our learners who do not have access to consistent and regular broadband or Wi-Fi access? They could not participate. They will not be allowed to participate because their socioeconomic factors actually impede them to participate. And that's not what we also hope to do, because at the end of the day, we would want to empower people and especially students from the low SES communities so that they can participate in the learning experience and that they will be allowed to access information that for the longest time they could not access. So yun po yung gusto rin natin gawin, na may mga modalities lang na konti lang po, as much as possible, yung Wi-Fi na ginagamit, and that is within the planning that Dr. Yeban has also illustrated to us earlier, that when we plan, okay, dito lang sa oras na to gagamit ng Wi-Fi or ng mobile data, at mapaplano ko doon sa buong banig ko yung mga critical points lang of Wi-Fi access. And then we can use that in learning management systems. One thing lang din po, in terms of speed and access, whether it's free or paid, and whether you have the same number of students, it's essentially the same in terms of access and speed. So if you're a new university at marami pa pong mga teachers na hindi trained on how to use the learning management system, what I really advise, and this is coming from an experienced lecturer that have used learning management systems, we can actually just explore muna a free learning management system, and then train our teachers on how to use the aspects of the learning management system. And once they are more well-versed in the use of the learning management system in their online classes, then we can probably address the next level of question, which is on security or on customization. Then we can invest in a paid LMS. Because only when teachers know how to use the learning management system and really commit to using the learning management system, will the investment for a paid learning management system be worthwhile. Second, teleconference tools. Zoom, Google Hangouts, Skype, Cisco WebEx, Microsoft Teams. So marami po tayong teleconference tools. But again, if we just want our students to receive information, then they can attend calls. Or we can ask them to take down notes or download the presentation. Receive lang information and then that's it. But if we want them to think on their own, dito na po papasok yung hindi po kailangang lagi tayong connected sa Wi-Fi. We can pre-record the video. Tapos using Zoom, meron po kasing ganoong functions yung Zoom. Pre-record the video and then embed that recorded video, upload it on YouTube or include it in a learning management system. And then they will just access that recorded video on their own time. One of the easiest ways to do the think on their own, if you want them to think on their own with the use of teleconference tools, is to also share it via Facebook Live. Kasi yung maganda po sa Facebook Live, nare-record na po kaagad yung video that we have shared. So students can just watch or view the video on their own pace and in their own time. If we want naman po our students to work together with the use of teleconference tools, we can also do that. So one way we can do that is with the use of Zoom. Recently, I also held a discussion with other teachers from across the country. And the beauty of Zoom is that you can split from the plenary. So ito po kami, nakikita-kita po kami lahat. And then split it into various groups. So just imagine this is the similar experience that we do as teachers as we proceed from instruction to the group work that we require in class. So we discuss a certain concept, etc. And then we require them to go to group 1 and then go to group 2. We can also do that with the use of teleconference tools easily, smoothly, and it really is a good experience for our kids because they will be more comfortable, possibly without the intervention of a teacher. They can be more comfortable in discussing their opinions or discussing their thoughts freely and without and more informally. So yun din po yung magandang experience with the use of teleconference tools. The other third tool that I'm also sharing with you is the productivity tool. So yung productivity tool po na ito are tools that allow us to create files, documents, and various outputs. So Google Sheets, Google Docs, Google Slides, and also maganda rin po if we also use the Google Calendar because our students will be reminded of the various deadlines and the various engagements that they will do with the use of various tools. So if we want our students to just receive information with the use of productivity tools, we can send a Google slide presentation. Pero hindi po sila allowed na mag-edit or hindi po sila allowed na mag-comment. They can just be allowed to view the information. And that's very one way. Parang it's teacher to student, I want you to read this, I want you to study this. We can do that. Another thing, if we want them to think on their own, then we can use the Google Slides. We can create a PowerPoint presentation like this, allow them to download the PDF version or the PowerPoint presentation of that slide deck, and then allow them to really view and really access the information within those within those files, and then think on their own, and then eventually submit an output that is communicated in the file that we share. The third one is we allow them to work together. So the beauty of productivity tools is that we can open a file and really allow students to comment and edit and add and customize and create an output with the use of productivity tools. So we can, when we also use Google Slides or Google Sheets, makikita po natin doon yung mga tao at yung mga estudyante na gumagawa at nag-i-input noong kanilang mga outputs doon sa productivity tool po na yun. One tip po that we can do with the use of productivity tools, when we have a smartphone, we can also download the applications, phone applications, that we can access via phone. So it's not, hindi po natin kailangan ng tablet or hindi po natin kailangan ng laptop para gumamit ng productivity tool. We can also use smartphones po, so that we can still create a collaborative and constructive experience for our students. Repository, these are the links that can house and store the content that we want our students to download information from. So, some examples of this would be Google Drive, probably the most well-known version of an online repository. Pwede po tayong gumawa ng mga folders, major folders, subfolders, and within those folders, there can be various files, whether it be productivity tool or a live file, such as a Google Doc or a Google Slide, or we can also put their outputs. We can ask students to submit outputs via Google Drive. Another repository, I included it here as repository, while these are also sources of information, YouTube and Vimeo and Facebook. So what we can do po is to upload files in YouTube's, and our YouTube accounts can actually store the YouTube content, the video content that we have produced. One good example for this is Eddie Wu, Eddiewooo. He's a teacher from Australia. And for the longest time, I think for like 3 or 4 years now, he has been very, very active in uploading YouTube content on his teaching of mathematics in YouTube, and uploading it in YouTube, so that his students who might be absent from class or who could not go to class due to some issues, they can still participate in the class and still be updated because of the YouTube videos. Local examples of this would be Knowledge Channel, of course, and also other sources of information, such as there's one teacher po who is also using creating mathematics content. What's also exciting about our context now is that a lot of our teachers are becoming more and more involved and engaged in creating videos. One example of this would be Haven Villapando. What I know is that Haven is a teacher in one island here in the Philippines, or in Visayas, and he creates online videos, Teach Storya, wherein he teaches history. All of the videos are uploaded in YouTube and in Facebook. So we can also emulate those examples, brave examples of teachers who are really, at the end of the day, what they would just want to do is to share information to their students. Again, okay, so if we would want to use repositories for our students to just receive information, then we can do that. We can allow them to receive and download files. We can allow them to watch videos. But if we would want them to think on their own, then we can ask the students to download files from the online repositories, use those downloaded files for self-learning, and then submit at the output at the end of the week. And if we want them to work together, we can also do that via Facebook groups, or also with the use of Google Drives, wherein they can cross-exchange files from one another. Messaging apps. One of the tools that we can definitely use are messaging apps, such as Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Viber, Telegram, and also with the use of SMS, with the use of the major telcos, or the services provided by the major telcos, such as Globe and Smart, and probably Sun and Talk and Text. So they can exchange text messages to one another also with the proper guidance of our parents. I will show you two examples of fantastic use of messaging apps, particularly WhatsApp, so that there will be an exchange of files from students to teachers. The first example that I'm going to show you, this one is from Malaysia, and the teacher is teaching consonant, vowel, consonant words. I think this is in grade 1.
Say these words. Pot, pen, pencil, you, your. Boy, pen, pencil, you, your.
Oke, Kak, bagus. Tapi bukan pot, juga sebut pot. Pot.
Put. Boy.
So as you can see, this is I think like a 3-minute video. What the teacher did was she first posted a video of her teaching the pronunciations of the words pot, pot, and pencil. And so that video, that short clip, can be uploaded in WhatsApp. What if we are also thinking about the other skills that our students rather would need to use or would need to perform, then they can use voice messaging technologies or the voice recording features of WhatsApp. So they can record that, and early students can, or like primary grade students can essentially do this by themselves. I remember when I have cousins who love watching Peppa Pig on YouTube, and I'm really surprised that they can use tablets on their own without the guidance of an older person. So what they do is they use the voice search function. So they say Peppa Pig, and then they are very well versed in the use of these tools already. Hindi po sila parang second nature, parang automatic po sa kanila ito. And it's really amazing that students and lower grade kids can actually do this. But what's also good in WhatsApp is that, as you can see here, the person, so ito po, when after receiving the feedback from the student, the teacher can automatically and easily provide clarifications to the student. So there's an immediate feedback. It's interactive. You do not necessarily need to have high bandwidth connection here. So it's really what we hope to do at the end of the day. The second video is this one. This is from India. So as you can see here, this is a screen recording, a phone recording of the teacher demonstrating the platform of the Google Drive. So dito po, number one, we could also be reminded that Google Drive links can be accessed via phones. So we do not necessarily need to require our learners to have pocket Wi-Fis and also to have laptops if they cannot afford that. Let us not provide interventions that might be more cumbersome to our learners. So if they have access to phones, then that could be an intervention, or that could be a tool for them to constantly and continuously participate in their learning experience. Ito naman po, contrary to the first one, because this is within teachers and learners, this one, the sample from India, is participation between parents and teachers. So the teachers create learning packets, upload it in Google Drive. The parents access the files via their phones through Google Drive, and then they can co-facilitate the discussion between parents and students. So that might be a mechanism as well on how to use tools for our learners. But we can explore the use of various messaging apps, but also be guided as to the access that students actually have. All right. Assessment tools. So we have discussed various tools already. Assessment tools, these are tools that allow us to receive more formal, more longer term of outputs, and also feedback from our students. Or probably as well, we can receive feedback from the parents that we are co-working with. So we can use Google Forms, SurveyMonkey, Google Classroom, and Zthings to really get assessment and feedback from our students. So if we want them to receive information, we can receive real-time results of their performance or see whole class statistics. So if we want naman po our teachers to receive information as to how the students are doing, we can also do that. If we want students naman po to think on their own, we can allow them to answer assessments and submit assessments on a later time. So we can allow them to submit an output, a 3,000 word essay, or a video output via Google Classroom. So we can allow them to do that. If we would also want our students to work together, we can also allow students to create tools by themselves. So we can allow students to, for example, group 1, magre-report po sila about solids. They can create a short quiz via Google Forms, and that is also a collaborative output that they can do. Some helpful links, bibilisan ko na lang po ito. You can also access the bit.ly COVID database PH. I created this entire Google publicly available Google file for you. Tapos makikita niyo po dito, I would just like to show this, that in the file, if you access this, you can also go and you can also access various tools that are included in that file. So for example, one of the most useful links that I included there is the one from GCF Global. Tapos meron po doong tutorials on how to use Gmail, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Drive, etc. And these are all for free. You can access this again via the bit.ly COVID Edoc database PH, or I can also share this to the PAPSCO Aspire team so it can be uploaded in the PAYAC website. Some challenges, quick challenges in using online tools. Of course, the lack of hardware and software access, high costs to internet connectivity, cybersecurity, and also the fixed mindset of some teachers towards tool adoption when they feel that they might be a bit scared with the use of online tools in their classes. Some call to action lamang po, final thoughts on call to action for school admin and deans, technical personnel, and teachers. We can, as school admin, the first thing that we hope to do is to finalize matters regarding hardware and software directions for the school. And this is also guided with a survey and with a toolkit that is provided to you by the PAPSCO Aspire team. And also as instructional mentors, we should and we could lead in the professional development of teachers. And at the same time, we can require a technical person to be placed inside the school so that all of the technical troubleshooting can be done by that particular technical person. And as teachers, I really encourage everyone to create and participate in a community of practice, in a learning action cell, and be not afraid. I mean, really start exploring tools, have fun, and really share what you have learned and experienced so that we can constantly learn from one another, region and region, and start creating and curating your teaching and learning content also based on the MELs. If you also want, you can also participate and join the COVID-19 Bayanihan Educators Forum. I have also done this with other co-teachers from Miriam and Xavier. And we did this entire Educators Forum regarding all of the readings, helpful tools, and links that are also contextualized in the pandemic of coronavirus. So on behalf of Bon Samuel Atienza and also on behalf of the PAPS Aspire team, again, I'm Carlo Fernando, and I would like to thank you for listening to this particular talk. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Carlo, for that very informative, very interesting and challenging presentation. There are a number, as any good presentations make, you have provoked a number of questions. And one of them, I guess, has to do with the online or screen time. I got views from a parent and also from another teacher. So that said, perhaps to summarize that question would be, would the Department of Education or relevant agencies in the government be setting guidelines or recommendations as regards the time allotments for the for the screen time of children to be spent in learning?
First of all, thank you for that question. But at the same time, I am not representing the Department of Education. So let me just clarify on that. But while I also closely work with the Department of Education because I serve as a lead for digital education DICT, we can, and thank you for, I guess, asking that particular feedback, because I've just been reminded that this might be a need actually from the field. I would also like to thank Dr. Yeban for creating and sending that information prior to her talk from the American Psychological Association, because we can also create from the ICT and DepEd on really exploring and understanding more guidelines for our teachers. But I guess as any other country, we can also learn from other countries, and we can be guided by the already evidence-based feedback and research that are happening outside. And so I guess the feedback that have been provided to you already by APA and other organizations might also serve as the guidelines for your own, and for our own context.
Thank you. And there were a number of questions regarding the materials that were presented here. And if I may reference them once more about the toolkit that we are producing. But yes, on the part of your suggestions and the platforms that you have shared, would you have some sort of a you have your blog site or something that could where these materials could be viewed, or
what I can do
materials?
Thank you, Sir Bennett. What I can do, sir, is to also invite everyone again to the COVID-19 Bayanihan Educators Forum. So that's one. All of the files are already there, and a lot of lively discussion amongst educators and policymakers. And number two, I can also send the presentation again to the PAPS Aspire team, and I allow you to please share the presentation to all of our teachers, because we're all in this together. All of the challenges are shared, and hopefully all of the solutions are shared.
Thank you for that, Carlo. And at this point, may I then, I think our audience, our viewers are ready for the summation of the presentation. And may I invite Dr. Zaira Lee Bedural, who was with us yesterday, but for those who might have missed the brief bio, Dr. Bedural is currently the Associate Dean of the Faculty of Behavioral and Social Sciences at the Philippine Normal University. She has taught at the Christian University of Thailand and worked on various projects at the University of the Philippines Population Institute and the International Labor Organization. She completed her PhD in Social Studies Education from the Universitas Pendidikan, Indonesia. Truly an ASEAN regional citizen. So at this point, may I call on Dr. Zaira Bedural of PNU to give us the highlights of what we have learned this morning.
Okay, thank you for that introduction, Sir Bennett. At magandang umaga po muli sa ating mga kaguruan at sa mga school owners and planners. So today's discussion, the two presenters were very extensive in their discussions on the flexible learning options by Dr. Felicia Ban, and also the educational technology affordances presented by Sir Carlo Fernando. I'm sure all of us learned so much from there. But again, I just like to highlight a few items that we need to think about when we do the planning. The first is deciding on which flexible option to adopt, and technology integration that we have to do in our classroom, in our instruction, is really all about planning. We have to plan ahead and we have to plan well. And this is not just for teachers, but it involves also right from the school level, the teachers, as well as the parents and their students. Tomorrow, Sir Bennett will also discuss about stakeholders. So these are all integrated. We cannot work in a vacuum. Sabi nga pa ulit-ulit ni Ma'am Feliz at ni Sir Carlo that collaboration is the key, you know. Number two, I'd like to go back from what we presented yesterday. The planning has to be data-based or data-driven, okay? Ma'am Feliz actually mentioned earlier that the flexible learning options that we will use should be backed up by the actual data that we collected from our surveys in our schools. Because we cannot be implementing, the flexible learning options um, that deviate from the reality of our students and our teachers. Okay, so we have to make use of those data, because I've heard, there are a lot of surveys already, but they are not being used to actually inform the planning process. Okay, and I will have to remind you on that. And also, because and also the goal for um, there is a plethora of, like what Sir Carlo presented. There are a lot of productivity tools. There are a lot of creativity tools, a lot of technologies out there available for us to use, for teachers to use. But how do we choose which one is the best? Okay. Um, the survey that we presented yesterday collected data on the capability of teachers to use these technologies. I think that we have to start where the teachers are more familiar with. I mean, let's not be over um, let us not be overburdened with which technology to use. Again, let's go back to the data. Which of these technologies are easy or are most familiar with the teachers and even the students? We have that data. So you can start from there. And then, of course, collaboration, just like what Sir Carlo mentioned, we have to um, encourage our teachers to share this knowledge, this technology knowledge uh, among them through LAC sessions and through other collaboration platforms. Also, there should be a another is the yung tinanong ni Sir Bennett kanina from the survey, from the question, yung screen time of the students and the issue on siguro yung affordability of mobile data, 'di ba? Na-discuss kanina ni Sir Carlo, how much do we need and how much can we pay for it? How much can we afford? Okay. Yung flexible learning option kanina ni Dr. Yeban on the schedules, the scheduling is very important part of the planning process. I think we can limit, there is really a need to limit the screen time. And we can only do that and economize on the data needed, okay? If we limit the synchronous activities, of students. And how do we do this? Ito yung babalik tayo dun sa sinasabi ni Dr. Yeban na kailangan seamless ngayon ang integration between education and the real life experiences of our students. Kasi pag hiwalay pa rin, just like we did in the pre-COVID education delivery, wherein courses are packaged in the delivered in classrooms, content lang and everything, mahihirapan talaga. So ang hamon kanina ni Dr. Yeban is to really integrate the learning routines of your students and the content and the goals, the outcomes of our instruction. So in that way, we don't have to engage our students 8 hours or at least 3 hours a day on screen. Kailangan ng synchronous or just watching videos. So it involves real planning. We cannot do this kapag hindi tayo nagplano. No? Okay. So I think those are the four, because I have notes here. Those are the items that I would want to highlight as far as what we have gathered from these discussions. So with that, thank you again. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow will be another great discussion from Ma'am Marlene Balagtas on assessment and Sir Bennett, of course, on stakeholders engagement. Maraming salamat po.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Zaira. Thank you very much, Dr. Zaira. Rarely do we have a summary which is as insightful as the main presentations themselves. And to bring this edition of the webinar series to a close, we invite again our project team leader to formally close this session. Dr. Esther Ojeda.
Magandang umaga, malapit ng maging magandang tanghali. I'd like to thank our speakers for this morning, Dr. Yeban and Carlo Fernando, for elucidating on the technologies needed for teaching and learning and bringing us back to the principles that are necessary to understand for teaching and learning. The brain-based research requirement, understanding that, constructivist approach, the dynamics of teaching and learning required for teachers to understand better their students. And of course, by this time, I would suppose our participants have embraced the need to transition, given the demand for it, to different approaches that will replace face-to-face learning as of this time and embrace a new normal to a better normal, as mentioned earlier. And for our administrators and school leaders, I do hope that in the planning process, they're able to see the importance of supporting a favorable environment for learning for our students and even for our teachers. Tomorrow, we will be seeing the presentations by Dr. Balagtas on assessment in flexible learning and by Mr. Bennett Benoza on stakeholder engagement. I hope that you tune in. There are a lot to understand about our program and to help our school administrators and decision makers to transition the teaching learning mechanisms in schools to blended and flexible learning. Magandang tanghali sa inyong lahat, and this closes our second session for today. Good afternoon. Thank you.